The Manta hummed beneath Kira's hands, its cobbled-together engines running smooth for once. A good salvage run, a quiet morning. Then the sky caught fire. Through the morning haze, she caught sight of something falling, no, plummeting, toward the ocean. It wasn't one of Citadel's aerial scouts, too big, wrong profile, and it was leaving a trail of exotic particles that made her salvage detection equipment throw up its metaphorical hands and display nothing but error messages. Kira's fingers tightened on the controls. The last time she'd seen anything fall from the sky like that, it had been the brass ring, Silas's rig. Her mentor's home, dropping piece by burning piece into the hungry ocean while Citadel forces circled like sharks, ensuring no survivors broke the surface. Geothermal rupture, they called it. Tragic accident. She'd salvaged what was left. The blast patterns weren't from a reactor overload. They were from demolition charges placed to break the rig apart. Too deliberate. Too much like Admiral Castor's other unifications. The falling object hit the water with enough force to send a pressure wave that the Manta rode like a bucking bronco. Whatever it wasn't from around here, and in Kira's experience, things that weren't from around here were either very valuable or very dangerous. Usually both. She dove. The quiet inquiry materialized 4,000 meters above the Atlantic Ocean with all the fanfare of a soap bubble popping in reverse, which was to say, none at all. Exactly as the Glycans preferred it. Dr. Lorien adjusted his environmental suit's pressure setting and frowned at the readouts cascading across his retinal display. Temporal insertion complete. Variance from projected parameters, negligible. Atmospheric composition, within acceptable... His fingers stopped moving. His pupils dilated. Attell Anel recognized as maximum processing load. Anel, verify these geothermal readings. His junior colleague floated to the sensor array, her movements economical and steady despite the frailty that marked all their kind. Where humans had evolved for endurance and adaptability, Glycans had traded physical robustness for neural complexity. The result was a species that could calculate orbital mechanics in their heads but needed powered assistance to open particularly stubborn doors. Verified, Anel confirmed, though her tone carried a subtle, high-pitched thrum of distress. Geothermal activity exceeds baseline projections by 400%, and these metallic signatures... She gestured at the holographic display, where angry red blotches dominated what should have been pristine blue ocean. There shouldn't be any refined metals in this concentration, not in this era. The timeline remains intact, Lorien stated, running through calculations that would have taken a human supercomputer hours. We are precisely when we intended to be. Therefore, our data must be... The first plasma bolt struck their starboard shields before either of them could finish cataloging the situation. Temporal wake misidentified as weapons discharge, Anel reported, her finger sliding across the glowing surface of the control grid, tracing new command paths even as the ship bucked. Local defensive systems have engaged. They're using directed geothermal energy as a weapons platform. That technology shouldn't exist for another 4 millennia, Lorien declared. The second bolt proved him wrong by shearing through their primary stabilizer. The wreckage was already sinking when Kira reached it, hull plates peeling away like old scabs. Whatever it was made of, it wasn't aurichalcum, or an alloy she recognized. The metal's surface seemed to writhe with colors that shifted in underwater light, never settling on a single hue. Her sonar painted a picture of imminent collapse. The thing's structural integrity was failing fast, internal compartments flooding in sequence. But there, a pocket of air, probably the command section, still holding. Movement inside. Survivors. Dead Salvage didn't argue about ownership. Dead Salvage didn't have friends who came looking. Dead Salvage was simple. But Dead Salvage also couldn't tell you what it was worth. The hull parted like butter under her torch. Water rushed in and 2 figures in form-fitting suits tumbled out with all the grace of drugged seabirds. Kira grabbed them with the Manta's manipulator arms, hauling them into the rear cargo hold. She also snagged something else, a lattice of what looked like smoked glass shot through with filaments of frozen lightning. the only intact component she could grab before
The atmospheric seal is broken.
one of them, the smaller one, shouted through some sort of speaker in his throat in accented but understandable spoken linear A.
The sterilization failsafe is active.
The other figure, older by the look of him, nodded with grim resignation. It is procedure to prevent temporal or biological contamination. Kira had just enough time to process the word temporal before the wreck imploded. Not exploded, imploded, folding in on itself until where there was nothing left but a brief whirlpool and some very confused fish. Well, she said to her unexpected passengers, who were busy vomiting seawater onto her cargo deck. That's new. Kira's workshop occupied a prime spot in the shambles, prime being defined as unlikely to sink in the next decade and close enough to the good smuggling routes. She claimed it years ago, back when she was still running crew for Silas on the Brass Ring. Now, it was hers. Every jury-rigged power coupling and creaking deck plate. The Glycans, they'd introduced themselves during the ride back, sat on crates looking like drowned cats who had just discovered they were allergic to water. Anil kept staring at the workshop's power systems with an expression with mixed fascination and horror. Your energy conversion efficiency, she said, watching Kira whack the main power coil with a wrench when it started its familiar death rattle, is approximately 4%. How does anything function? Stubbornness and spare parts, Kira grinned. You should see what it can do with 3%. She turned to the device she had salvaged, running her hands over its surface. The thing hummed with potential energy, making her fingertips tingle. Whatever it was worth a fortune. She could feel it. The Chronos anchor, Lorian said, his gaze locked on the device. You recovered it. A Chronos anchor? Kira's grin widened. Sounds expensive. Also sounds like something I should understand before I sell. Sell? Lorian's voice cracked. You cannot sell the anchor. It was a carefully calibrated temporal instrument. In the wrong hands. I'll sit in my workshop while I figure out what it's worth. Kira pulled up a battered chair, straddling it backwards. So, start talking. What are you, and what's this thing do? The Glycans exchanged glances. Anil spoke first. We are temporal archaeologists. We observe historical events without interfering. Right, and I'm the queen of the sunken continent. Kira tapped the anchor. What do you really want? That is what we want, Lorian said stiffly. To observe, to record, to understand. Your civilization should not exist. Flattering. I mean, he clarified, according to our historical models, this region should be inhabited by scattered Bronze Age fishing communities, not... His gesture encompassed the view through the workshop's window, where 1,000 ships and floating platforms created a city that had never known solid ground. What is this place? Atlantis, Kira said, or what's left of it. When the mountains blew their tops and the land went under, we took to the water, adapted, survived. Her voice hardened. No thanks to the Citadel. The Citadel? Central Forces, where Admiral Castor sits, pretending he united us instead of conquering us piece by piece. She stood, pacing. Look, I'll make you a deal. Help me understand what this thing is really worth, and I'll... The workshop door exploded inward. Citadel guards poured through, weapons raised. The armor bore the mark of Castor's elite-powered suits that warped the air with waste heat, their joints whining with restrained power. Nobody move! The lead guard's voice was amplified and distorted. By order of Admiral Castor, you are under arrest for possession of classified military assets. Kira's mind raced. She hadn't even started negotiating a sale. How did they... Oh, Milo. She breathed. Of course. The scrap lord had eyes everywhere, ears in every conversation. He must have heard about her find, tried to broker a deal with the Citadel before she could. The device, the guard commanded. Hand it over. Kira glanced at the anchor, then at the Glycans, who looked ready to faint, then back at the guards. 6 of them. Powered armor. Energy weapons. Terrible odds. She smiled. Sure thing. She reached for the anchor, then grabbed the jury-rig power coupling she'd been working on instead.
Catch!
She yanked the coupling free and threw it at the lead guard. The unstable energy core ruptured on impact, sending a cascade of electrical discharge through his armor. He convulsed and dropped.
Go! Go! Go!
The workshop erupted. Kira rolled behind her workbench as energy bolts seared the air where she'd been standing. The Glycans, to their credit, didn't freeze. Anil's hand swept over Kira's console. A series of rapid taps and swipes brought every power tool in the shop roaring to life, spinning and sparking in a symphony of distraction.
The roof access!
Kira shouted, grabbing the anchor.
Move!
They scrambled up the ladder as guards tried to navigate the gauntlet of rogue machinery. Kira could hear reinforcements arriving below. This wasn't a shakedown or an arrest. This was an execution squad. On the roof, the shambles stretched out in all its chaotic glory. Platforms connected by swaying bridges, zip lines, and pure optimism. Kira didn't hesitate. She grabbed a cable and launched herself into space, the anchor clutched tight. Behind her, she heard the Glycans' horrified exclamations, followed by the whistle of them following her lead. For beings who needed powered assistance for doors, they were adapting quickly to the necessities of survival. They landed hard on a fishing platform 3 levels down. The owner took one look at the Citadel guards rappelling after them and suddenly remembered urgent business elsewhere.
Milo's place,
Kira panted.
2 platforms east. If he sold us out, I want to know why. Query,
Lorian managed between gasps.
Does pursuit by military forces increase or decrease our survival probability? It depends.
Kira shot back, already running.
Can you swim?
They reached Milo's compound to find it in flames. Not the accidental kind. The thorough, systematic kind that said someone wanted to send a message. Guards were still on scene, tossing the place. Kira pulled the Glycans behind a stack of salvage crates. Through the smoke, she could see Milo's body, throat cut with a single, clean line. Tying up loose ends, she whispered. They killed him after he gave them what they wanted.
But he didn't have the anchor,
Anil said. No, he had information. He knew I had it, probably tried to set up a sale. Kira's jaw clenched. Castor doesn't leave witnesses. A guard emerged from the burning building, speaking into his comm.
Quartermaster Darrows, the fence is neutralized. No sign of the device. The salvager must still have it.
Find her,
a cold voice replied.
The Admiral wants that artifact, whatever it takes.
The Glycans exchanged glances.
Doctor,
Anil said quietly.
If Admiral Castor requires the anchor,
Query becomes catastrophe,
Lorian finished. His fingers twitched through rapid calculations.
If they interface it with the geothermal systems, the temporal feedback could lock us out of our own time stream. We would be stranded. Permanently.
Then we make sure he doesn't get it. Kira watched the guards form up and move out. Hunting patterns she recognized. They'd sweep the shambles platform by platform. But first, we need somewhere to plan. And I need to know exactly what we're dealing with. 20 minutes and 3 platform changes later, they huddled in a maintenance shaft beneath the tangles, a section of the shambles too decrepit for even the desperate. The anchor sat between them, pulsing with soft light. Talk, Kira commanded. Fast version. What is this thing and why does Castor want it? Lorian's explanation was clinical, logical, and terrifying. A device that could create localized temporal fields. In the right hands, a tool for archaeology and observation. In the wrong hands, he could erase things, Kira said slowly. People, events, entire civilizations. The models support multiple applications, Lorian confirmed. Including what you describe.
Doctor,
Anil interjected.
Perhaps we should consider...
No. Lorian's tone shifted, carrying an edge Kira hadn't heard before.
We observed enough. Human is correct. If the anchor falls into Admiral Castor's hands, our academic distance becomes complicity.
So what do we do? Kira asked.
We ensure he doesn't get it,
Lorian said simply.
Even if that requires aggressive intervention.
Kira studied the 2 aliens. Fragile, logical, completely out of their depth. Then she looked at the anchor.
This thing that had fallen from the sky and brought death in its wake. Silas would have thrown it in the ocean. Too dangerous, he would have said. Some salvage isn't worth the cost. But Silas was dead, killed by the same man who now haunted her. The Citadel's impregnable, she said. 20 meters of reinforced aurichalcum, energy shields, automated defenses, an army of guards.
Insurmountable obstacles,
Lorien agreed. From the outside, Kira's smile was sharp as broken glass. But every fortress has to breathe. The Citadel pulls cold water through its thermal exchange network, pipes big enough to fly through, if you're crazy enough to try. Define crazy, Anel requested. Superheated steam, crushing pressure, navigation through a three-dimensional maze while dodging turbine blades and praying your hull doesn't rupture.
That's not crazy,
Lorien said.
That's suicide.
Probable suicide, Kira corrected. There's a difference, and right now, it's better odds than waiting for Castor to find us. She stood, decision made. We go tonight. They won't expect an assault. They're hunting prey, not fighting predators. We get in, find out what Castor plans to do with this thing, and stop him. How? Anel asked. Creatively. Kira after the anchor. You two are supposed to be geniuses, right? Figure out how to turn this thing into a weapon that works for us, not him.
That would violate numerous temporal safety regulations,
Lorien said. So does letting a genocidal admiral erase civilizations, Kira shot back. Pick your paradox. The Glycans looked at each other, conducting one of their silent conversations. Finally, Lorien nodded.
We'll need access to your submarine systems, he said. The integration will be unconventional.
Everything about the Manta is unconventional. Kira was already moving, plans forming. That's why she works. As they prepared to leave their hiding spot, Anel asked quietly, Why are you helping us? You could trade the anchor to Castor. Buy your safety. Kira paused at the shaft entrance. Through the grating, she could see the distant lights of the Citadel. That massive fortress that had swallowed so many free rings, so many independent souls. Because Silas taught me something, she said. Some things are worth more than safety. Sometimes, the only way to honor the dead is to really piss off the people who killed them. That's not logical. The thermal exchange pipes beneath the Citadel were a masterwork of engineering sadism. Kira had studied them for years, mapping their patterns from salvage schematics and the testimonies of the few maintenance workers drunk enough to talk. She'd always wondered who designed them. Now, navigating their twisting passages in the Manta, she was pretty sure it was someone who hated both physics and people in equal measure. Pressure at this depth exceeds the Manta's rated tolerance by 30%, Lorien informed her from his position at the hybrid scanner they'd built. His original sensor array lay in pieces around Anel, who was weaving its processing filaments into the anchor's housing with a kind of focus usually reserved for religious experiences. Good thing I never bothered rating her properly then. Kira adjusted their approach vector, feeling the submarine's hull groan in protest. Ratings are for people who don't trust their welding. That is not how materials science. Lorien's protest cut off as Kira rolled the Manta sideways, missing a venting steam pocket by centimeters. The water around them went from Arctic cold to boiling in the space of a heartbeat. You were saying? Never mind. The entrance to the thermal network loomed before them, a massive intake valve that cycled open every 43 seconds to draw in cold water. They had maybe 10 seconds to slip through before it slammed shut again. But it wasn't just about timing. Kira had run these approaches in her head 1,000 times. But she had also studied the patrol patterns, the maintenance schedules, the sensor nets. Guard shift changes in 90 seconds, she announced. Maintenance drone sweep in 3 minutes. We've got one shot at this. The modifications are ready, Anel reported. She'd done something to the anchor that made it pulse in rhythm with the Manta's engines. Though I should note that what we've created violates 19 distinct safety articles. Only 19? Kira grinned. We can do better. Doc, how's our approach? Lorian's pupils were dilated again, processing at full capacity. Valve opens in 15 seconds. Optimal entry vector calculated. Though I should note later, navigate now. The valve began its cycle. Massive metal teeth retracted into housing that could have swallowed a dozen mantas. Kira felt the pull of the intake current, the water itself trying to drag them forward. Mach, Lorian said. Kira punched it. The manta shot through the gap like a bullet, clearing the valve with barely a meter to spare. The teeth slammed shut behind them with a boom that resonated through the hull. Phase 1 complete. Now for the fun part. The thermal network spread before them in her hybrid display, a three-dimensional maze of pipes, valves, and pressure chambers. But Kira didn't see obstacles. She saw opportunities. There, she pointed at a section where 3 pipes converged. Maintenance junction. They'll have cut flow to Sector 9 for repairs. I saw the work order posted in the tangles. We can use that dead zone to... A turbine loomed out of the darkness, its blades spinning, each scything sweep perfectly calibrated to immense anything in its path. Kira threw the manta into a spiral, threading between the blades with inches to spare. To navigate around the primary detection grid, she finished, as if nearly being pureed was just part of the conversation. Your knowledge of the maintenance schedules is remarkably detailed, Lorian observed. I've been planning to rob the Citadel for years, Kira admitted. Just never had a good enough reason, or a temporal anchor, or alien accomplices. Happy to help, Anel said dryly, then pointed at the display. Energy spike ahead. Something's drawing massive power. Through the murky water, they could see it. A section of pipe that glowed with heat distortion, the water around it actually boiling. The readings were off the charts. They've already integrated it, Lorian breathed. The anchor. They must have another one, or a replica. They're testing the system. Then we're out of time. Kira made the call. Forget subtle. We go straight in. She brought the manta up hard, breaching through a maintenance pool into a space that reeked of superheated ceramic and hot metal. The engineering deck sprawled before them. But it wasn't the cathedral of pipes and machinery she remembered from salvage schematics. It was a killing floor. Bodies lay scattered between the machines. Technicians by their uniforms, each one with their throat cut. The same clean, single-line wound that had killed Milo. He's cleaning house, Kira whispered. Anyone who worked on the project. Witnesses, Lorian said. He's eliminating witnesses to something. They climbed out onto the deck, moving carefully between the corpses. The heat was overwhelming, but the lack of sound was what made Kira's skin crawl. A place like this should be alive with noise, machines humming, people working. Instead, there was only the distant thrum of the power core. This way, she said, leading them toward a service ladder. But she stopped at one of the bodies, a young technician. Couldn't have been more than 20. His toolkit lay beside him, scattered by his fall. Kira knelt, closing his eyes. Then she picked up his plasma cutter, checking the charge. Still full. He'd never had a chance to use it. For what it's worth, she murmured, I'll make it count. They climbed. The heat grew worse with every level, until even Kira was struggling. But she'd noticed something. Sections of the route that should have been guarded were empty. Security cameras hung dark and lifeless. He's pulled everyone back, she realized. Concentrated them somewhere. The command center, Anel suggested. If he's making a major announcement... Admiral Castor's voice echoed through the complex, confirming her guess. Citizens of Citadel, honored guest, what I show you today is not a weapon, but a tool of preservation. They reached the observation deck, just as Castor began his presentation. Through reinforced glass, they could see him addressing his senior staff in the control center below. But Kira's attention was drawn to what hung behind him. The Chronos anchor, but transformed. Where the device in her pack was a delicate lattice, this was a prisoner. Massive orichalcum clamps held a dozen smaller versions in a careful array, each one feeding into a central core. Power conduits as thick as tree trunks pulsed with energy that made the air itself ripple.
He reverse engineered it,
Lorien breathed.
multiple copies networked together. The power amplification alone. Our analysts have run the simulations 10,000 times.
Castor continued, gesturing at a holographic display. Population centers appeared across the mainland, growing and spreading in accelerated time.
The results are invariable. Within 3 generations, perhaps 4 if we're fortunate, the mainland populations will unite.
The simulation shifted, showing conflict scenarios, cities burning, fleets clashing, the citadel itself under siege.
Our descendants will face a choice: submission or extinction.
Castor's voice never rose, never emotional, just calm, rational certainty.
I propose a third option.
The display changed again. The mainland population simply stopped. Not destroyed, but never developing beyond scattered tribes. No cities, no unity, no threat.
We remove the conditions that allow their civilizations to form. A temporal excision. No bloodshed. No suffering. They simply continue as they are forever. Is that not mercy?
That's monstrous,
Anel whispered. But Lorien was running calculations, his expression growing more horrified with each result.
It would work. The cascade effects. He's not wrong about the outcome.
Being right about the math doesn't make it right, Kira said flatly. Down below, one of Castor's officers raised a concern.
The power requirements, Admiral. The system is already showing stress fractures.
Acceptable losses, Castor replied. Begin the charging sequence. He's going to do it now?
Kira realized. Not in an hour? Not tomorrow? Right now?
We need to get to that console,
Lorien said.
If I can access the control network.
Through a room full of his sensor staff and elite guard? Kira studied the layout, her salvager's instincts cataloging every detail. The positions of the guards, the flow of the space, the massive coolant pipes running overhead. Then she smiled.
I've got a better idea.
She pulled out the plasma cutter she had taken, checking its settings. Doc, you said something about resonant frequencies?
The armor operates at 4.7 kilohertz, yes, but...
And those coolant pipes, what if they rupture? Anel caught on first.
Flash freezing. The pressure differential would create
a localized blizzard. Kira was already moving. You two get to that maintenance terminal. Start your logic bomb. I'll handle the distraction.
Define distraction,
Lorien requested. Kira's grin was all teeth. She slipped through the observation deck's access hatch, moving along the gantry that ran above the control center. The coolant pipes were massive, decades old, held together by faith and regular maintenance. Time to test their faith. The plasma cutter sliced through the first pipe's housing like butter. Supercooled liquid began to spray, not enough to cause a full rupture, yet. She moved to the second pipe, then the third, creating a network of weaknesses. Below, the Kronos array continued to charge. Reality itself groaned under the strain.
Now,
Kira whispered and kicked the weakest joint. The pipe exploded. Liquid nitrogen erupted into the control center, flash freezing everything it touched. Guards scrambled for cover as their armor's heating systems went into overdrive. Visibility dropped to 0 in seconds. Through the chaos, Kira dropped. She landed on a guard, using his armor to break her fall. The plasma cutter found the joint at his neck, sending him into convulsions. She rolled and came up running, the cutter leaving a trail of disabled armor systems in her wake.
Environmental breach!
Someone shouted.
See all the...
Anel's voice cut through the comm system.
security safeguards overridden. New parameters accepted. Initiating cascade.
The lights flickered. The Kronos array's hum changed pitch, becoming discordant. Castor's voice cut through the chaos, still calm.
manual override. Authorization Castor Alpha 9.
Authorization not recognized,
The system replied.
Recursive loop detected. Power feedback in progress.
Now Castor moved, drawing not a gun, but something worse. A localized temporal disruptor. One of his guards had been carrying it, probably taken from the original anchor's housing.
If we cannot go forward, he said, raising the device, then we ensure no one can.
He turned it on himself.
No!
Kira lunged, but she was too far away. The beam enveloped Castor, and reality screamed. He began to fade, not dying, but being erased, written out of existence. But as he disappeared, paradox rippled outward. If Castor never existed, who built the array? Who gave the orders? Who? The world shattered. Kira found herself in a dozen places at once. In one timeline, she was still on the brass ring when it fell. In another, she was Admiral herself, cold and calculating. In a third, she'd never learned to salvage, never taken to the water, never...
The anchor!
Lorian's voice coming from everywhere and nowhere.
Someone needs to physically disconnect it!
Through the chaos of possibility, Kira saw the truth. The array was feeding on paradox itself, each contradiction making it stronger. Soon it would reach critical mass and everything, past, present, and future, would simply cease. She ran through timelines, each step taking her through different versions of herself. The plasma cutter in her hand was sometimes a wrench, sometimes a weapon, sometimes nothing at all. But her destination remained constant, the array's core, the original anchor at its heart. Castor's ghost stood before it, a temporal echo caught between existence and oblivion.
You doom them all,
he said, his voice fractal and breaking.
Without unity, without strength, they'll fall to chaos. Is that better than my order?
Yes, Kira said simply, and dove past him. Her hands found the primary coupling. The plasma cutter, when had it become a wrench, came down once, twice, 3 times. Each blow sent shock waves through her bones, through time itself. On the 4th strike, reality snapped back like a rubber band. The array went dark, the paradox collapsed. Castor's echo gave her one last look, sad, resigned, already fading, before vanishing entirely.
Structural failure imminent,
the Citadel's emergency systems announced.
All personnel evacuate.
The logic bomb had done more than disable the array. It had turned the entire Citadel into a self-consuming serpent, each system trying to draw power from the others in an endless loop.
Run!
A nail scream. They ran. Through corridors that aged decades and seconds, past bulkheads that phased between rust and pristine steel, over decks that couldn't decide which timeline they belonged to. Behind them, the Citadel began its death dance, not an explosion, an implosion of possibility, the fortress trying to exist in too many states at once.
The Manta!
Kira spotted their submarine through a twisting corridor.
Move!
They dove through the hatch as the bay doors failed, water rushing in with crushing force. Kira scrambled for the controls, her hands finding familiar switches even as the console sparked and protested. The engines coughed, died, coughed again.
Come on,
she whispered.
one more time, for Silas.
The Manta roared to life. They shot out of the Citadel like a bolt from the blue, riding the shockwave of its collapse. Behind them, the fortress twisted inward, metal screaming as it tried to occupy the same space from different timelines. They surfaced 2 kilometers away, the Manta's hull groaning but holding. Through the viewports, they watched the Citadel's final moments. The central spire bent at an angle that defied structural integrity, then simply wasn't. When it was over, nothing remained but debris and questions.
The timeline is stabilizing.
Lorian reported, checking his instruments.
The paradox resolved itself. Reality chose the path of least resistance.
Which is? Kira asked, slumped in her pilot's chair.
A world without Castor, without the Citadel's iron grip.
without certainty. He shook his head. The future is unwritten now. Truly unwritten. They floated there in silence, three unlikely allies in a submarine held together by prayer and spot welding. The Kronos anchor sat between them, dim and depleted, but intact. "We should return to our time," Enel said eventually. "Report what happened. Ensure this technology is properly contained." "Yeah," Kira agreed. Then she noticed something. A diagnostic readout on her console flashing red. The Manta's power core, already hanging by a thread, had been pushed too far. The temporal exposure, the desperate escape, the simple fact that she'd been nursing it all along for years. "How long?" Lorien asked, reading her expression. "Days, maybe less." Kira shrugged. "Knew it was coming. The Manta's like me, too stubborn to quit, but everything has limits," flatly. He pulled something from his equipment. The damaged power cell from his environmental suit, cracked from their escape, but still glowing with glycan energy. "This is worth," Kira began. "Nothing, if we can't integrate it." Lorien studied the Manta's jury-rigged systems. "Your power infrastructure is, how do I phrase this politely? A nightmare?" Kira suggested. "I was going to say creative." He turned to Enel. "Could we create an interface, something to regulate the energy flow?" Enel was already examining the console. "The energy frequencies are completely incompatible, unless—" She pulled out her tools. "Kira, do you have any spare coupling manifolds?" "Top drawer, why?" "Because we're going to do something inadvisable." Enel's hands moved with surprising speed. "We'll create a buffer system, use the anchor's depleted housing as a conversion lattice." "That's insane," Lorien said. "That's human," Enel corrected. "I've been taking notes." For the next hour they worked. Glycan logic met human improvisation in a dance of sparks and complex mechanics. Kira found herself holding components while the aliens argued about energy frequencies and probability cascades. "Try it now," Enel said finally. Kira touched the ignition. The Manta's engines hummed, not their usual desperate rattle, but a clear, strong note that resonated through the hull. "It works," she breathed. "Of course it works," Enel said. "We built it." "Together," Lorien added. "Perhaps that's the lesson. Not human stubbornness or glycan logic, but the synthesis." "Getting philosophical, Doc?" Kira grinned. "Perhaps." He began preparing the anchor for their departure. "Before we go, you should know, your actions today prevented a catastrophe that would have rippled through time itself. The debt—" "There's no debt," Kira cut him off. "We all had our reasons. You had your timeline to protect, I had my people to save. It worked out." "Still," Lorien made an adjustment to the anchor, and its light shifted from cold blue to warm gold. "The coordinates are set. This will take us home, but perhaps—" "Perhaps?" Enel prompted. "Perhaps we might establish a monitoring station to observe how this new timeline develops, purely for academic purposes." "Naturally," Enel agreed. "And if that monitoring occasionally requires direct consultation with local sources—" "You know where to find me," Kira said. "The ghost of the abyss isn't going anywhere." "Ghost?" Lorien asked. "What they'll call me. The pilot who flew out of the Citadel's collapse." She looked at the debris field that had once been Castor's fortress. "Someone needs to help the survivors. Teach them how to work together without someone's boot on their necks. Might as well be me." The Glycans activated their temporal field. Reality began to bend one last time. "Until next time," Enel said. "You're assuming there'll be a next time," Kira pointed out. "Calculating probability." Lorien said as they began to fade. Accounting for human stubbornness, glycan curiosity, and the general tendency of the universe toward interesting complexity.
Yes,
Annelle finished as they vanished.
there will definitely be a next time.
Kira sat alone in the Manta, her submarine purring with hybrid power. Through the viewports, she could see survivors pulling themselves onto floating debris. They would need help. Organization, someone to tell them that the future was theirs to write. She fired up the engines and turned toward them. There was work to do. Behind her, the sun set over an ocean of possibility. From the Glycan Temporal Archive entry 7739-B. Subject: Atlantean Anomaly Investigation. Temporal coordinates: -2000 CE, human calendar. Filed by Dr. Lorien, Senior Archaeologist. Status: ongoing.
Initial hypothesis invalidated. Humans do not represent statistical impossibility. They represent statistical inevitability under extreme conditions. Subject Kira successfully integrated incompatible technologies through methodology that all models classify as aggressive improvisation. The hybrid system's efficiency remains low by all standards, approximately 12%, but functionality is undeniable. Note: establishing permanent monitoring station as discussed for academic purposes. Warning: the anchor's modified housing shows signs of temporal resonance. Subject may have inadvertently created a beacon that transcends linear time. Probability of future intersection significant. Recommendation: update first contact procedures to include wrench-based negotiation and creative engineering solutions. From Tales of the Floating Rings, an oral history of post-Citadel Atlantis. The first time I saw her, I was 8 years old, clinging to debris after our platform collapsed. The storms had been brutal that season. Without the Citadel's weather management, we were learning hard lessons about the ocean's moods. Then this skimmer appeared out of nowhere. Not the cobbled-together raft we expected, but something that cut through the waves like they were personal enemies. Pilot pulled 19 of us out of the water that day. "Who are you?" my mother asked. The pilot just grinned.
Someone who knows good salvage when she sees it. You folks look like you could build something interesting.
She gave us tools, not just hammers and welders, but knowledge. How to read the currents, how to harness the thermal vents safely, how to work together without someone giving orders. We named our new platform Second Chance. I'm 60 now, and Second Chance is a city. We trade with the mainland, explore the deep trenches, build things that shouldn't work but do. And sometimes, when storms threaten or pirates grow bold, we see her. The same skimmer, the same pilot, looking not a day older. They say she found something in the Citadel's ruins, a gift from the before times, or maybe from visitors stranger than any legend. They say she made a deal with time itself. But I remember what she told my mother that day as she helped us onto her ship.
Time isn't about deals. It's about choices. Make interesting ones.
The ghost of the abyss. Still out there. Still choosing. Still grinning like she knows the punchline to a joke the universe hasn't figured out yet.